Hey everybody, my name is Wes.
And I'm Lori.
And today, Lori, we're talking about accounting.
Yay, accounting.
All the things. This is going to be, I think, the most packed live stream in terms of just content and questions and everything else in between.
So exciting, Wes.
You said that in a way where you're like, oh, a little hesitant. Well, before we dive into all the things, a couple of things I want to remind all of you on. First and foremost, our YouTube channel. If you like me and you like to learn how to do things by watching videos, because sometimes reading is hard, well, we've got a YouTube channel for you to help you out with that. All of our previous live streams and as well as a lot of step-by-step videos we put in our YouTube channel. But we also have another great resource for our people, Lori.
Our Facebook group.
Yes.
Our Facebook group users are amazing. They answer each other's questions, and it's absolutely a wonderful tool. And then, Wes, you also have built-in helps within the program under the orange help button. Once you go into the program, you're in there, you're like run into an issue, go to the help button. There you can create a support ticket to ask a question, schedule a phone call, and you have the use of our user guide, which has tons of information, including more of those YouTube videos.
Yes, and our user guide, because it's accounting, I first and foremost just want to reinforce, please go to our user guide because we have these great videos that you can watch in your own leisure that walk you step by step through everything you need to know about the accounting screen. The setting up accounting article, which there you are, Lori, which we'll be covering a lot of this today,
yes,
but
we will.
The quick version. But that's going to be a video for you all if you're just new to accounting, or if you want to learn how to use some of our other features like Bank Sync, which is probably one of the best features we come out with ever. You can learn more about that as well. So there you go. Okay, well, today we're going to keep things simple. We're going to be talking about kind of a crash course of accounting, just like how to get going and everything. And then we're going to talk about some of the features, but more specifically, we're going to be talking about like pro tips.
Yes.
Like things you want to do to really get the most of accounting, or just things you want to do so that way you don't do things wrong. So we've got a few of those. We had to limit to 7 because there's a lot of things you can do wrong when it comes to accounting, because that's just the nature of it.
Well, it's the nature of humans.
Yes.
Just to complicate it. Just make it as hard as humanly possible.
And speaking of making it hard as humanly possible, we're going to encourage you at the end. We're going to have tons of time for Q&A, and I want you to bring us your hardest accounting questions to try to stump Lori. And she just gave me the look like, say what now? You serious? You serious, Clark? Yes.
Oh.
And so we'll be answering all those questions at the end. But feel free, we've got a couple of people from our team that are hanging out in the chat. So if you have like random things you want to chime in on in the chat, please do. But just know we're going to have a dedicated Q&A at the very end. Okay, enough of the pleasantries, Lori. I've got a stopwatch here. We are going to first talk about setting up accounting. Are you ready?
Sure.
Let's go!
Okay.
All right, so setting up accounting, Lori, how do we get started?
Well, the very first thing you have to do, Wes, when you want to set up accounting is go in and look at your funds.
Okay.
ChurchTrack comes with a general fund, and don't delete this. Don't even try to change it. Just add to it. General fund is for everything you're going to use for your expenditures and your income in ChurchTrack. Then you would create a designated fund for like a building campaign or missions if you have a lot of external or internal missions that you support. This is a great one to have.
Okay.
Once you get your funds in place, okay, don't get carried away, just keep them in there.
So like what's your rule of thumb, like how many funds?
Typically, even a large church won't have more than 6 or 8 funds, but a smaller church should be able to get away with 3 or 4.
Okay. Now, first thing I see, Lori, is I see my fund balance 0. I got to change that. Why can't I change that?
It's not changed here.
Okay.
We put all this puzzle together, one puzzle piece at a time. So first you create your funds, then you're going to go to your categories.
Okay.
Notice how I skirted by that
Yes,
question.
you did, because it's a pro tip later.
It is a pro tip. And so now you're going to go in here and set up all of your categories. ChurchTrack already preloads some for you, the most common. General offerings, tithes and offerings, whatever you want to call it. It's the offering that comes into the plate or through online giving.
Okay.
If you note on the right-hand side, Wes, you've got all the properties, okay? Properties allow you to set the income or expense, the fund that you want to associate this category with. Okay. And if you want it to be a subcategory, for example, if you were creating utilities and then you had all of your utility companies underneath your subcategorized underneath your parent,
Yeah.
then you could do that.
Okay.
The children or the subcategories take on the properties of the parent.
Okay.
So if you make general offerings an income category,
Which it is.
and then you want to create a category for your electric bill,
So we'll just call it utilities.
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 So utilitarian.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
This is an expense category. Don't put an expense under an income, because what's going to happen is your expense is going to become an income category. Okay? What you would do is create your utilities parent and then create your electric bill, your water bill, your internet bill, your cell phone bill, whatever you have as far as your utilities for your church.
So I just created the internet. So then what I can do is I'm already selected an internet. I can say it's a subcategory of, and I'll just search utilities because I like to work
Easy.
smart, not hard. So now it's under there.
Right. And
Internet.
note, the properties changed a bit because you don't have your expense entity and that kind of thing. The default fund is still your general fund. You're paying this out of the money that comes in to cover the expenses of the church.
But I can
Okay?
always change that if I wanted to.
If you wanted to.
Okay.
Okay.
And so I'll just add one more just for fun. So we have internet. Let's call this water, our water bill. And then I'll just select OK. And then again, subcategory, I'll just search utilities. Don't want to have to scroll through a list when I can just type out a couple
Correct.
letters.
Correct.
And there you go. So now I've got my utilities, internet, water, if you had trash collecting, sewage, snow removal. If you're up north and you're dealing with that right now, I just want to say,
Sorry.
yeah, sorry. But,
It's cold enough here.
yeah, it's 30 here, and we're in Florida. Okay, so we've got our subcategories of our main categories. Anything else I need to know about this, Lori?
Well, Wes, before you can actually go in and use these, you have to have an account. So you're going to go to accounts.
Okay.
You're going to set up and add a bank account.
All right.
Okay? Now, this is a real bank account, something that has an account number associated with it and gets a statement. This is not for your payroll liabilities or anything like that. This is a checking account, savings account, CD, whatever. In this case, it's our main checking.
Okay.
Okay, so you have the question here. Is this an account held at a bank or financial institution? Yes.
Okay, so select yes.
Okay. Next, do you have access to recent statements for this account? Go get them if you do. You have to have this to be able to get the most effective setup of your accounts. So yes.
Yes.
Okay. Name it.
All right, and we're going to call this our church checking.
It works for
We
me.
only have one checking account at our church. We'll call this church checking, and it is an asset.
Hold on. Let me explain this for a second, Wes, because this does become a point of confusion. An asset account means this is where we have a positive amount of money set aside that is ours. It's cash flow. A liability would be if I owed a debt. This
So like a loan or a
Right.
credit card, stuff like that.
Your checking account should not start with a negative balance, so it should be an asset.
If it started with a negative balance, then you're overdrawing, and that's not good.
Yeah, there might be more issues to deal with there. But so yes, we're going to call this an asset, and we're going to go next.
All right, so
Okay.
next.
This is where your statement comes in. The start date of this statement is found on your bank statement. It says the beginning date. Usually it's the beginning of the month. So we're going to say 1/1
Okay.
for the sake of giggles.
And the beauty of this is we're in January, so there you go.
It's amazing. It's the easiest time to start this process. The balance is also going to be found on your bank statement. What was your starting balance for January 1st? Put your number in, Wes.
My number, all right, so I'll just put a fictitious number. Our church had, let's say, $18,956
13
cents in our account. There you go.
Now, a question that I get before you create this account is,
Okay.
what happens to transactions that are not on my statement? How do I handle those? We'll talk about that too. So we're going to roll with this for the moment.
Okay, and we're at 6 minutes. 2 minutes left,
Create.
Lori.
Create. Okay,
Crete.
so now you have your church checking account. Now, notice your general fund auto-populated. That's because you put a transaction in your transaction register. When you put a transaction in the transaction register, it is going to add to or take away from your fund balance, whichever fund you've got going on in there. That's how you get money in. So let's go into your church checking, Wes.
And to do that, I'll just select it.
Okay. Now, of this $18,956.13, we know this is not all general offerings. There are designated contributions
Correct.
in here. Okay. So you want to edit by double clicking or click it and click the edit button, whichever you prefer.
Okay.
Again, you're going to go in here and you're going to modify this transaction. You're going to spread this money out by adding a line item.
Okay.
Click that button right there for me. And in this case, we're going to call this missions.
All right, so we'll do missions.
You didn't create a missions
I
category.
did not create a missions category.
Well, how do you fix that, Wes?
Well, I can go back and I can fix that. So then I can go to categories real quick. This is why it's so important to create the funds, then create all the categories, and then we can create our account. So I'll just call this missions real quick. It's so fast to create these things.
Link it to your missions fund for me.
Oh, yes. So
there
missions.
you go. Now, go back to your checking account. Edit that beginning balance transaction.
And then I can select missions. There it is. Now I'm going to have to do some math here in my head because let's just say for our intensive purposes, we're only splitting this amongst 2 different funds.
That's fine.
But typically churches are probably going to have like 3, 4, 5 different funds they're going to be splitting this beginning balance with.
Exactly.
So we'll just say, let me get my calculator out.
Just do $2,000 in there because we're getting ready to send this money off at the beginning of the year. So that would deplete your first one by $2,000 and bring it to 16 instead of 18.
There you go. I like your thinking. So
Easy
there we
math.
go. So then we split it up. So now
note, the balance is exactly what we wanted it to be, $18,956.13. This doesn't change. This is still going to be the same transaction. It just has more details in it.
Okay.
So if you need to memo this transaction, if you need to put notes on these, as in these are carryovers from the year before, whatever, that's how you're going to indicate how you're starting, okay?
And I'm just saying beginning balance. I mean, every church is different. They're going to say different things. And that's it. So I hit close. So now it's saying multiple categories. So now when I go back home to my account screen, now my funds actually have the amounts that I want to be in them.
If a fund has $0 in it, it will not show on the right-hand side of that screen.
Cool.
So if you create a fund and you never go add money to that fund through a transaction, you're not going to have it show on the right-hand side of that screen.
Well, as fun as that was, we need to move on. So we've talked about setting up accounting, and that was obviously the very quick version. I encourage you to check out our videos where Lori actually goes into a little bit more detail than what we just did. But let's talk about just some of the accounting features. And we're not going to spend a ton of time on them just because there's so many, but we're going to highlight some of our accounting features. So now I've just flown over to another test account that we used to show this off. So let's go ahead. Let's start showing some accounting features, Lori.
Okay. Important feature. I know it sounds crazy, but people need to know how to add a transaction.
Yes.
We get all the time, how do I get transactions into ChurchTrack? We have to open the account you want to do the transaction in, which means you have to have created the account. So if you have not created it, let's go back to the process we just did and get all that in place first. Okay? Pro tip I'm going to give right now, Wes.
Okay.
Giving categories and accounting categories work at the same category list.
Yes, they do.
Okay, so if you create all of your income categories in giving, then you have created income categories in your categories table in accounting.
Yep.
So you can use them. You're going to want to make sure that you don't duplicate things in this process.
Yes, and that'd be lame if they didn't carry over. That'd be a lot of extra work.
It wouldn't work.
All right, so I'm on my account screen. I just click whatever account that I want to add in a transaction. And again, these are all just fictitious transactions here to show it off, but all I have to do is select Add Transaction. And there you go. I can start typing out whatever it is I want to pay. So
let's talk about transaction types here, Wes.
Okay.
Okay, so there are 3 transaction types. There's a deposit or a credit entry. That's going to come from your giving screen, or if you have an insurance refund, or somebody pays rent to the church. These are going to be deposits. Those don't go through the giving screen. Only contributions go through the giving screen, okay? An expense transaction is going to be a bill pay, an ACH, supplies, whatever you're doing that's going to take money out of the checking account. And then there's a third transaction called an account-to-account transfer. If you have more than one account in ChurchTrack, you can utilize this feature to move money from your checking to your savings, or money from your checking to a CD,
Yep.
or savings to a credit card, whatever. You're going to utilize that transaction, and it changes the look of the transaction. Don't deplete money from one account and put it into the other, because it's going to skew your records. Use the correct transaction type.
Yes, and we have videos, by the way, too, that
Yes, we
walk
do.
you through this process, because it's a pretty common thing at churches to do this.
It is, and if it's done wrong, it really skews the budget and everything, because all of the transactions that go through your account's registers feed into your budget categories. So there's a lot that goes on in the background of ChurchTrack that keeps the complexity down, so that you guys can utilize it and not have to think about every little thing. Okay?
right.
Now, categories. Use the details in your transactions, Wes. If this transaction is to pay for transportation and you dropped in a payee, let's talk about that for a second. There's an option there that says show payee address. There's a lot that goes on with payees. Again, this is a user guide feature that's going to be explained very well. But for things that you pay on a regular basis, Wes, what would you pay on a regular basis?
Oh, I mean, just going through my payees, like business internet at our church. And
Where's
I love
the coffee
this.
shop?
Oh, we need to add that. But this is so great, because you can type in a transaction. Let's say the first time you're paying someone.
Yeah.
I'll just use an example here. So I'm just going to say fake first time transaction. I know, I'm super clever. And then I can save this payee for quick entry next time, and then pull my category, my fund. And then that's going to create a memorized transaction,
Right.
aka
It just drops
payee.
it right in for you.
Yeah, and
Okay.
so from here, I can put like any notes I want to put on there. I can put a memo, all that stuff. I can even drag and drop. Let's say it's an invoice. So like, just to go back to, I'll use my,
Here, where's your water thing?
yeah, I have my water bill that I can use, or community electric. So I've got all this. So they obviously provide me with an invoice every month. And so I can drag and drop that invoice, put that in there, have it digitally stored, which is great.
And it's accessible from your file storage. So there are so many functions that are within this window to make life easy for you. As soon as you save this transaction, it depletes your balance, it updates everything on the account screen for you, and you have the ability, Wes, to print checks from here if there's a check number in place on that transaction.
Yep.
You are of the age, I'm just going to throw that out there, that you do everything electronically. I honestly do too, for most part. But there are actually a few companies out there that still require you to write a check.
Yep.
In ChurchTrack, to print a check, you must enter a check number in the REF or reference field.
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to be the trigger that allows you to print a check. We have gotten so many check printing questions this year, so it is there, it's available to you, and if you need assistance, let us know through a support ticket and we'll be glad to help.
Now, a feature I love that's a new feature is bank sync and import rules, because what we just
do
did.
the opposite. It's import rules and then bank sync, because if you get the cart before the horse, you get run over.
That's very true. And so in ChurchTrack, we can create all these different rules, and we can have all these different transactions automatically come from our bank.
So cool.
And so right now I've got all these transactions, or I'm sorry, this is a different account. Let me go to another account here. So here's my credit card. So I have my credit card, zero balance right now, but I've got all these transactions that I can bring in if I want to, directly from my bank. I didn't have to do anything.
Well, you do have to push the sync button.
Yes, you do have to do the sync button and
We've
add
got
those.
a lot of questions about that they think it just auto feeds, but there is under the actions button, there is a sync new transactions option, which is going to prompt you with a date. You have to click this, and it's not going to just auto feed unless you actually do this. So when you see the date, that's today's date. We want to go backwards, Wes.
Mm-hmm.
Go back in time for me. How far you want to go back?
Well, I could, but I already have the things
Right, you
pulled
do.
up here, and I don't want to show real financial data, so we will avoid that.
That's awesome.
But what I want to do is just show just the beauty of this. So I've got all these transactions, right? Well, I'm going to be honest, some of them don't look the prettiest, and it would be nice if I could make them look better, or just have them automatically be assigned to different categories, because right now they're all assigned to general offerings, and that's not going to be the case with so many.
No,
And
because now you're depleting your income. Be detailed in your transactions.
So I can go to Manage Import Rules from our Actions button here. Now I have no rules right now. I cleared them all out just for you all so I can show this, but I can add a rule. And so this is why I always say first do your import, first do your sync so you can see all your transactions. That way you know what rules you want to start creating. I know you said do the other one first.
Opposite.
I always say, so we're in disagreement here, but I always say do this just because I'm visual. I need to see the transactions first so I know what rules I want to put in place. And so, because you can reapply them. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm looking at my transactions, just kind of flying through them, and I see this JEA Easy Pay. So for us, that is our utilities, our electric. And so in our case here, this is our electric bill. So I want to go ahead, I want to make a rule. And so I will go to my Manage Import Rules, add a rule. And now I'm just going to call this electric. And I'm going to apply this to transactions. It can be a specific account or just all accounts. And I'm going to say if the payee contains JEA, not JEP, JEA, then it automatically applies the actions below. Now you can skip some transactions, by the way, but this is not very common practice. So now I can change the payee description, and I'm going to call this electric bill. And then I can select the category that I want to assign this to. So I can assign this to my utilities category. And then
you have an electric category, don't you?
I believe I do. Yeah, there it is. And so now from here, I can select what fund I want this to come from. General fund. Add transaction tags, which I can, honestly for this, I can call it an auto pay because many of ours are auto pay here.
That's a good thing.
So I'm going to do that as a transaction tag.
Wait, one more thing.
Yeah.
You cannot add your statement from your rules or your sync window. You
Correct.
have to add the transaction. So apply the rules, add the transactions, then go back in and put your statements on there.
Yeah, and just to show, so let's say I was creating more rules and everything. So I go back to my import. Well, obviously that JEA is still there. And the reason why it's still there is because I haven't applied those rules. So what I can do is reapply the rules now. So everybody watch this, reapply rules. And now, whenever I go to that page, wherever that was, electric bill, and it went to the electric bill category.
I love it.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
And you can have multiple rules in here. So it's not
Yes.
like you only have to have one. You can have multiple things so that when you run those rules, it updates your transactions automatically.
Yeah, and you can have as many rules as you want. I'm not much of a rule follower. Sometimes I like to go rogue, but when it comes to my accounting, I like to have a lot of rules.
All
Makes
the
life
details.
easier.
All the details.
All right, now Lori, kind of fast forwarding because we have so many other things we got to cover as far as some of the top features here. Let's briefly reports. Now we don't want to talk about all the different accounting ports, but I think it's worth stating here because we get asked all the time, where is the profit and loss report?
Where's the P&L?
Where is that report, Lori?
It's called your income statement, guys. The income statement is a snippet of information. It's based on a time frame. So when you start your dates, you put your start date in here. Remember, it's going to show data from the beginning of this date to the end of this date. Everything that goes on in between is going to show you, but nothing outside of that. Okay, so keep that in mind. But it's your P&L. If you make it for a wide range or a short range, it's still only going to show you what's in that range. Okay,
Yeah.
The balance sheet, Wes.
The balance sheet.
This report is actually it's a handy dandy report.
Handy dandy.
Handy dandy.
Okay.
So it's going to show all of your accounts and all of the funds, and it's going to show whether it's an income or an asset or a liability. It's going to show you this, and it's going to break down the funds that you have applied and give you your net position. This is from the beginning of time, in this case, the beginning of when you started using ChurchTrack,
Okay.
through an end date. You can set that start date to any date you want. It's
still going to be
It's
from the end of time. Is that a
yes,
song? I
from
don't
the
know.
beginning of time.
Okay.
So when the dinosaurs were here, I don't know. But anyway, when you run this report, it's going to provide you that data. Banks like these two reports.
Yeah.
If somebody tells you that this is not an accurate report, I'm going to use garbage in, garbage out. If your data is not accurate and you're not providing the details, then you're not going to have good reports. The more data you put in, the better your reports look.
And this is a good example because this is a test account that we don't put that much data in, and so obviously the data is going to be terrible in our report.
It's still informational though.
Yeah.
I mean, based on what I can see, you really like the general fund.
Yes, I do.
So.
And another thing worth pointing out too, like a lot of the reports in ChurchTrack you can export to CSV because we've kind of taken this approach where we've got these reports that you can quickly generate that are super easy not only for you to read, but your volunteers and your treasurer team and stuff like that. But if you're the type of person like me, I'm this type of person where I like to make my reports a very specific way, a way that no software will do except Excel because I can customize everything.
Yeah.
Well, if that's you and you're like me and you just like to customize everything because you're like that, well, you can just export it to a CSV, not a CVS, that's a pharmacy store, but a CSV, and then you can go and then change that port, add the colors you want, put in charts and things if you like to do that sort of stuff.
Remove the lines, make it pretty.
All those things. Okay, so reports. Now, another thing worth mentioning, Lori, because we are short on time and I want to talk about some pro tips and answer questions, is the ability to search transactions in ChurchTrack. Now, we just changed this slightly. It used to be on this side, on the left, and now it's on the right. And so from here, I can search any transaction. And so
you can search payees, you can search references, you can search accounts, you can search categories, funds, or multiple combinations of things. This tool is your research. Go back to edit for me.
Yeah.
This tool is how you find everything in your accounts in a very snap.
Well, and this is how a lot of times when we're helping people in support, this is how you're helping find it. So you have the same tools we have at support. Now, another thing worth noting here is that...
Let's scroll all the way down to the end of that. So go all the way down. We also have now provided a report title. So if you want to use the search to provide your children's ministry with the information about what they have and what they spent and this kind of thing, you can name it and provide them that data based on categories and funds and date ranges and everything else. So that's even more cool.
And this is nice just because whenever I want to generate a report of something specific for a certain company or a certain missionary, payee, whatever it may be, then I can just click View Report, and then I've got this report done. And then if I need to, I can export that to CSV, not CVS. I always have to remind myself it's not CVS because I twist them. It's hilarious. Anyways, that's so search. And then I think worth mentioning, Lori, even though we've got great videos, but ChurchTrack, we have a lot of churches that come to ChurchTrack and still use QuickBooks or another similar accounting software just because of certain needs they have, but they still use us for their budgeting because that's how good the budgets feature is in awesome. ChurchTrack. And just to show you how fast it is, so you'll obviously want to create your categories and everything in ChurchTrack, but then when I go to create a new budget, I mean, I can just name it so I can call it Budget 2024. And then from here, I can just...
The start date is important because this can be your physical year or your fiscal year.
And then I can just start selecting all the categories or subcategories to go along with those I want to add. So let's pretend I go through, I add all my categories, I select Create Budget. Well, my budget's halfway done because now all I have to do is start putting the amount to that item. And so then I can say, all right, this item is this many dollars, this item is that many dollars. And it's not uncommon for me to see churches do their entire yearly budget for their church. I say yearly because the budgets are yearly, but it's not uncommon for us to see churches do this in like 30 minutes.
No, not at all.
It's crazy.
And what's even better, Wes, is when you set it all up, the common question that we at Support get is, how do I get my numbers in there? Well, that's the beauty. If you're using the accounting screen and the transactions and you're using them correctly, they auto feed the budget. So everything updates automatically. You don't have anything to worry about.
All right, now we've covered how to set up accounting. We've covered like all the general features very quickly. All right, pro tips. Now we're gonna fly through these pro tips like super fast. So pro tip number 1, create deposits.
From the giving screen.
Yes.
Do you know why, Wes? Why do I always preach this? What am I screaming about on a regular basis? And I do, I yell.
I know why, but I want you to say why.
Okay, so open up one of your giving dates.
Okay.
Okay, something that has data in it. Okay, so in this case, we have cash offerings of $3,980. But if Wes was to go in and add contributions, because we have a missions campaign going on right now and we need some missions money going in.
So let's say Ron was very generous and donated $2,000 to
That's
our...
$200.
Oh, yeah, see, there you go. You got to make sure you type things in right. And we'll say, I think I still have the missions. Yeah, so I can put here missions. We'll do foreign missions.
Even better.
And then we'll say check number, add the check. All right, so add this contribution. It's in there. Cool. So I've got this.
See the giving summary? Highlight that for me, Wes. Just kind of put a circle around it. There you go.
Right there?
That giving summary is very important because these details are what you need in your accounting screen transaction to translate over to the accounting screen.
Yep.
So once you are done entering all of your giving for the day, the date, whatever, you go to the Actions button, you click Create Deposit. This actually is a great tool to allow you, everybody says, how do I get money into different accounts? Well, if you have contributions that are going to your building program and you don't want to have to transfer them, you can go in and not select them, but then go back and add them to your business or building account. Then in this case, we would just create the deposit, okay?
Now when I go to the accounting screen and I go to that checking account that I did that deposit, it's going to be there. And there it is, offering multiple categories. But then when I go deep into there, I can see the details. And so this is so important. And
so important. You don't get this from importing from the bank.
No.
The bank doesn't care what categories you use. They care about the money. So you want your giving to come from the giving screen, not the bank.
Yeah. All right, pro tip number two, consolidate your funds. This is so common. We see churches, they'll create a foreign missions fund, then they'll have a local missions fund, then they'll have this other fund that's like missions and part of it. So they have like 5 missions funds. You don't need to do that. You can create one missions fund and then you can have those categories, because the job of categories is
to delineate the giving.
So that is a pro tip for you. Pro tip number 2, when possible, consolidate your funds. Pro tip number 3.
Please don't have a category for everything.
Yes.
Office supplies is a great example. I've gone into accounts and I see a category for stamps, and I see a category for copy paper, and I see a category for the copier maintenance, and I see a category for pens. No, office supplies are office supplies. Keep it simple. You have a memo field and a note field.
Yes.
Document it. If it's that important, attach the receipt with things highlighted so that you know what the office supplies were purchased. Easy peasy.
My rule of thumb is like a dollar amount. Like, obviously you may want like a pen category if your church, buys 100,000 pens a year and that's how big you are, then yeah, you probably need to categorize those things. But if these are just little purchases of like 50 bucks.
Marketing?
Yeah, you still would do that. Like, very rarely does someone have a category that specific, even in the business world. So there you go.
Just saying.
4, transactions need details. What do you mean, Lori?
If you go and have a Walmart transaction, okay? Walmart, you can be picking up supplies for the kitchen. You can be picking up supplies for the janitorial supplies. You can be picking up pastoral snacks. Lord knows you could be feeding the coffee bar. These are transactions that you can break down. Don't just put that you went to Walmart and spent $350, because the church needs to know the details of what you spent, and the budget's not going to update because you spent miscellaneous. That's the category you're using at Walmart. Then that's going into the budget. It's not going to grab the notes or see the receipt.
Yeah.
Okay?
So we want to use our categories specifically. We want to put notes, any tags we want to use.
You're not using general offerings
No.
for. And this is our next pro tip. So this is good that Wes just did this.
Yeah, I did that on purpose for you.
Do not use general offerings for an expense transaction.
Please don't.
Because what happens is you deplete your general offerings, your income, by those expenditures. I had a customer actually reach out to me in December because his budget was flat. When I say flat, I mean he had one line item, because everything that came in was general offerings and everything that went out was general offerings. So he had a lot of activity in accounting for the whole year, but he had one budget item that had a balance in it, and that was it. And he was not happy.
I wouldn't be happy either.
But that's the way he did his budget, and his transactions. So you need those details to feed your budget.
All right, pro tip number 6, update your categories for your import before doing an import.
Show them what you're talking about, Wes.
So when we talk about doing an import, we're talking about going into accounting, and then we go to our particular checking account as an example
And
of
this
that.
is whether you're syncing or doing a bank statement import. This is no bearing whatsoever on the type of import. The category is always, no, right there.
Oh.
General offerings. Nope, go back to your accounts.
Sorry, I'm like way off here. All right, go ahead. I'll just go back to here. Okay.
Go to your import sync.
Okay.
The category that comes in with every single transaction is general offerings. Double click that for me, Wes.
Sorry, you keep telling me to go somewhere, and then my eyes are losing it. All right.
Sync, import.
Okay.
Click on a transaction.
Okay.
And open it. Okay? You can update your category here. You can update
Yes.
the details here. You really want to do that. So remember, these transactions feed your budget. You need this correct to give you correct reporting.
And what's so cool about our software is when you do this, the software learns and it knows what typically goes where. And it's pretty good at guessing.
JEA/electric bill is a rule, but it will also then start just updating on the import.
Yes.
So teach it what you want it to learn. It's easier than teaching children.
All right, last pro tip. Account-to-account transfers are a transaction type.
Yes. Okay, so
we already mentioned this earlier, but
this is Lori's pet peeve. I'm not going to lie to you. So go to your checking account.
All right, go to my checking.
Okay, when you are moving money from your checking account to pay your credit card, you're going to create a new transaction. You're going to call it an account-to-account transfer. That changes the whole look of the transaction.
Yeah.
You're moving money from one account. Here, Wes, we're going to transfer to the credit card.
So then I would just call this credit card. Now, obviously, you're already going to have a pay
Credit card
in here.
payment.
And there you go.
Put your amount in here. What fund is the money coming from? Where does it currently live? That's your general fund because this is your checking account, okay? Memo can be multiple things. The question I get too about this, Wes, is what if I'm making payments from the youth fund and the missions? And that's fine. You can actually do a fund-to-fund transfer in another transaction. But this is moving money from this checking account to that credit card and paying it off or whatever.
So there you go.
Okay?
Now, we just covered a lot of pro tips. We covered how to set up things, basically a crash course. We covered all the core features. We did a lot.
We kind of made it sound like it's easy, but it does take a little bit of time if you're going to do this correctly.
It does. But thankfully, we have a lot of great videos to help you out along the way and everything.
And a great support team. Don't you forget.
Yes. Now, we're going to move into a time of Q&A where you can ask us questions live. Yes, we're happening right now. Now, if you see that someone has already asked the question that you're wanting to ask, or if it's a really good question, be sure to upvote that question. Now, while you're typing out your questions, for those of you who are watching the replay of this live stream, hello to you in the future. Obviously, you can't participate in this Q&A that we're about to have that we won't even post later. But if you do have questions, like Lori mentioned earlier, just reach out to our support team. We're super fast. We're here to help. We're ministry leaders just like you. We're worship leaders. We're pastors. We are children's ministry leaders. You name it. We do that here at Church Track. And so if you have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out, create a support ticket, schedule a phone call. You can send us smoke signals, however you want to communicate with us. Probably not smoke signals.
I probably haven't learned those yet.
We hit so many, we had like so many people register for this. It was crazy.
There are so many accounting train wrecks out there. And that happens whether they're using QuickBooks, Quicken, Church Track, or the next fly-by-night software, or even an Excel spreadsheet. We are human. So you actually need an accounting platform to help keep your checks and balances in place with what your bank has. So please take advantage of Church Track Accounting. And if you have questions, that's what our support team is here for. We're glad to look at it, tell you if it looks good or not. There were actually 3 support tickets that came in this morning that said, I just want somebody to look at it and tell me if I did it right. Which,
this is how we're gonna finish this live stream, Lori. So unlike a lot of other companies out there that like don't want you to reach out to them and are like, oh, you look at our user guide, don't talk to us. We want you to talk to us. And obviously we do want you to watch our videos and stuff in the user guide so that way your life's easier. But on our setting up accounting article, because a lot of you are setting up accounting, or maybe you're having to redo it because you did it wrong, I want you to look at step 5, I believe. Step 5, submit an accounting review ticket. Go ahead, once you set up everything for your church, reach out to us and just say, hey, I wanted you to take a look at my accounting, see if I set things up right. Our dedicated accounting team here will look at your account and they'll go through it and make sure that nothing looks out of
whack.
Out of whack. Make sure like the categories are the right income categories and these other categories are properly expense categories, that you don't have 47 funds in only 2 categories, things like that. So that way you're not having to come to us 6 months later and be like, oh, my reports, they're not looking right. So we want to catch things early. We want to help you. We're really big on support here. So please reach out to us, have us look at it for you. Lori, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join us in this live stream. Now, I know you've got probably 30 tickets that were just created out there. We're all going to start answering. But you all stay tuned. We are doing a live stream next week on Church Connect. We'll send out an email tomorrow about it. But that's going to be a good one. So hang tight for that.
You guys have a great rest of your week.
See ya.
Bye.